So who wants to just go in? Okay.
Okay, I'll speak to, quickly, police review boards. The police review boards, like everything else, you, as we the people, have to make sure that you have input. You have to involve yourself in it. You can't sit back and complain about things that you don't involve yourself in. So that's the key, is to read, read. I'm affiliated with Howard University's law school, and what we do there is to work. This organization of procedural justice comes out of Howard, and involve yourself. Many of the, in fact, all of the things that the benefits that many of us were able to achieve came out of collective action. You have to have collective action. You just can't do things individually, and you can't sit back and wait for someone else to do it. With respect to police militarization, a lot of that's the federal government dumping surplus equipment. Now your elected officials ought to tell their police chiefs, I don't want it. If you don't put pressure on them, they'll continue to accept it. And my father was from South Carolina. People from South Carolina, they say they carry a knife for one reason, they're gonna cut somebody. Now, if you have a certain type of equipment, you will use it. There's a time, it may be a time for it, but we don't need much of the equipment that you have. Everybody's talking about cameras. Cameras are only as good as the people, because cops will circumvent anything that you put out there unless they're properly supervised and managed. So when don't put all your eggs in the basket on cameras, because cameras will be helpful. But when Eric Garner got choked to death, it was on camera. So that didn't change anything. So just that involvement is everything.
Okay, I'm going to go to Ron Hampton, and then we'll end with Sergeant Smith.
Yeah, thank you very much. I tell you, I agree with Clarence. If you're going to have a civilian complaint review board, I would do some reading on the ones that they have had in this country now for some time, because they've been around for a while. There are a few who stand out. There's some issues that there's some things that if you're going to have a successful civilian complaint review board, you have to have subpoena powers. The mayor of Newark just gave the police board in Newark subpoena power. You have to have it. You have to have a good budget, independent investigators, all those kind of things. I would go overseas too, because they have some similar situations that have worked pretty well in the UK, in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, because this whole notion of civilian complaint review is not new. It may be new to America, as well as they resisted. They resisted. So you got to be involved in it.
Ron,
Yes, ma'am.
and tell how long it took how long it took us to get that.
Oh, it's
30 years.
Oh, it's been a long time. The
30.
one here in the district. The treatment of people, the militarization, I'm opposed to that too. And this is not the first time, because when we were coming back from Vietnam, the police departments in the States got some equipment from Vietnam, and we looked up and saw it. The personnel carriers, the Rams in LA, and the Rots, and those kind of things. So they've been using it for some time. And then finally, the cameras are good, but the cameras aren't going to solve the problem. They really aren't. And then there's some privacy issues with the cameras too, also. And then, I'm not going to let the police come in my house with cameras on. If he comes to take a report, I'm going to stop him at the door. If he wants to cut it off, he can come in. Because, see, in plain view still exists. And you don't know what's in your house. I don't know what's in my house. I live in there, but I don't know what's in there. Somebody could have left something there. And I'm not going to be subjected to all of that. So there's some policy issues that we have to do. I mean, we're having that discussion here in D.C. The mayor wants to restrict viewing of the cameras, and the city council chair, the chair of the committee, says he disagrees. I agree with him, because what's the use of it if we're not going to let people look at it? That's agreed, because that's part of the accountability factor. So that's key. We have to do that. And there was something that you were talking about, the militarization.
I was talking about the problem of the selection process. How do you screen folks for, let's call it weapons addiction?
Oh, yeah, well, having served in Vietnam myself and coming back, and I didn't go directly from Vietnam into the police department, but I certainly worked with some individuals who didn't have any business being police officers. They needed to be something else. So I think that's an issue. So this whole thing about hiring vets, and then maybe, yeah, we ought to be hiring veterans because they laid it on the line, but some jobs I don't think they ought to be, and yes, there ought to be a tool that somewhere or another that we can evaluate them, because we ought not be bringing someone on who was waiting to get his gun or her gun back and then to turn it on somebody in the community. That's not going to work. And in this day and age, we have some young people in our community, whether you want to believe it or not, who are not afraid of police or guns, because they're going to have, or they have guns already. And so that's going to be, I think that's a real issue, because when you get pushed and pushed and pushed, at some point you push back. And so we're going to have to deal with that, and that's not reading very well with people. We want to say people in the community with guns are terrorists, but police with guns are police. That's not true.
Okay, thank you so very much. And last but definitely not least, our guest from Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Sergeant Craig Smith.
Civilian Review Committee, you're right, not something that's new to Canada, but I'd even say that within Nova Scotia itself, we have a commanding officer who is the person who's in charge of the division. We have a commanding officer's Black Advisory Committee, an Aboriginal Advisory Committee as well, so they become one of the tools as well that connect with the communities and then funnel back up to the organization, but then also meet with the Black membership as well and help to bring change from within the organization as well. So over and above the review committee, it also helps to have those voices at the table that can sometimes raise the concerns that I can raise, but they don't necessarily always have to listen to me because I'm an employee of the organization. So to have that mechanism has been a great help, and it's funneled a lot of the change. In our province back in '95, when we had our first big presentation to try to increase the membership in the organization, we had 4 Black Mounties in the whole province out of 1,100 Mounties. Today we have 43. We made some progress. We still got a long ways to go. But we have made some progress, but a lot of that progress was because of that advisory committee and the weight that they carried themselves. With regard to the training on disabilities and mental health stuff and crisis intervention, we're in the process. What I should have said earlier, I guess, I'm in charge of community policing for the RCMP in Halifax as well. So the school liaison officers and community policing constables report to me, 14 different people. They're in the junior high and high schools, and there are also those that connect with community organizations. So our first line was to make sure that they were all trained and that they connect with the mental health individuals and agencies within the city itself. And then from there we funnel the training down to the frontline members that are out there as well. With regard, we've had the cameras in the police cars for years now. Very easy just to not turn on when you start work. So again, it has to be that accountability piece, or else it looks great, sounds great, but unless somebody's taking care of the follow through or holding somebody accountable, for some reason it didn't work that shift when I was working. I want to thank you guys though for giving me the opportunity to come down here and to speak with you as well.
You can parlay. I think you have some books. Hold up. Again, thank you very much for coming. Give yourselves another big hand.